One of these days I'll get to a new intro. I think it's time to start looking for a new intro, I think. Or working on one. G'day friends and fans, and welcome to Dave Talk Stuff. Ukraine War update for the 3rd of November 2025. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games, Into the Earthbound, and New Erotic Tales from the Empire. Part 1's out now, Part 2 coming soon. Thank you to all those who support the channel. You can support the channel through the links in the description below. I know I do things differently. I wish people would stop complaining that I'm different. You really just want the mainstream media? Are you tired of the same mainstream media slop? Then stop complaining I do things differently. Ha! Actually, most of you aren't complaining. Most of you are wonderful, wonderful people who view. Wish more of you would click that like button. But hey, I know most of you are watching on X, and so you don't actually have a like button. Actually, geez, I can't remember. That was a long time ago. It used to be Hearts or something, wasn't it? Periscope? I forget. I forget the details. Yeah. Gosh. Now we've got some stupid... Actually, Hearts is on Facebook now, I think. And it's stupidly implemented. I don't know what they're thinking. Monetizing likes, making you pay money to give likes. What were they thinking? I don't think it's widespread. I think it's just something they tried and now they're backing away from very slowly. Supposedly as a way to pay creators, you would buy likes or hearts or something, or stars. It just seems to be a mess. I've never actually seen it working on anybody's page, by the way, so I actually honestly think Facebook is broken right now. But it's definitely full of Ukrainian glazers who thinks the sun shines out of their rear. Now, if you can't spot what's wrong with this photograph, it's a composite. You know it's a composite. Your eyes are telling you, your brain is telling you that the shadows are wrong. You have a blue sky with darkness in the foreground, lights on in the building in the background. This is a crazy piece of propaganda. Well, most of it is. Ukrainians, obviously, the national center resistance! We are heroes! We're teaching you to hit a boxing target. Just freaking stupidity. They're preparing to sacrifice their entire population. I'll get to why in a moment. And why things are dangerously escalating in Ukraine right now. But first, I'm going to start skipping all this. Most of it, unless there's something different, which there isn't, I'm just going to ignore it from now. Because it's just bullshit. Oops, I hit the microphone. I hope you didn't get a thump out of that. Alright, so... Far out. Alright. Okay. The Ukis have hit civilian targets yet again. Look at this time, it's Lugansk instead of Donetsk. They just want to bring terror. They want to terror to the world. Alright? Ukraine is losing, so like any immature, malformed, malignant, neo-Marxist. It's what they are. They're just, fascism, communism, they're all twisted little competitors for power. But at the end of the day, this coalition of lunatics, just the liberal establishment, are trying to bring the world yet again to war. And Ukraine, just like the British and French exploited the Greek struggle for independence, how they betrayed the Italians, and the British trade unions helped Mussolini get into power. They helped Hitler. How Roosevelt and the British intelligence and the trade unions helped Hitler get into power. The world has been betrayed time and time again by people in positions of power who abuse power, get away with it, because the ruling party has too much power over its candidates, and the people have too little power over its political establishment. Most of the people, however, and you see it on X, are arrogant. Like the British farmer who's posing as a dairy farmer right now and is in fact a representative of corporate dairy farmer, right? Not a independent. They're a corporate dairy farmer. Wants the return to the common market. There ain't no fucking common market. It's the EU and it's a political organisation. The trade is just a carrot to their stick. But they don't care how much you got sold out by the EU. They don't care that the majority voted to leave. No, you got to pander to her needs to be subsidised by the EU for corporate dairy farming. This is the problem. Most people don't look at who's posting the you gotta look at people and say, your arguments are just so selfish. There's nothing I can say that will persuade you, but I'm going to point out how selfish you are anyway. I know you're going to lash out, but you're selfish. Alright? And I'm not talking about all British dairy farmers. I'm talking about that one particular dairy farmer activist, a middle-aged white woman who inherited a dairy farm, okay, is part of the corporate dairy farming elite in the UK, who live on government subsidies and handouts her entire life. Same with all these trade unionists in the NHS. They're parasites. Now, I'm going off track here. But it's the state mentality, okay? That the state has money, therefore I will leech off the state. I want a job for life from the state, and you, the taxpayer, have to work hard to provide me with more money than you earn. They earn more, not you. You earn less. You pay taxes, while they get subsidies, tax breaks, and pay less tax. And on top of that, it's for life. And then they retire with generous pensions, and they give themselves awards and bonuses, and they have their little trips, taxpayer-funded quongos and fact-finding missions. And then they turn around and lecture you that you're somehow the problem for climate change, and that you have to give up more. And then, when it comes to war, they turn around and say, we're special. You have to go fight the war for us. So, they're not elites. They're parasites. Learn the difference. Now, I'm not saying that everybody on government contracts. I mean, Elon Musk shouldn't have a rocket company that just goes out and makes rockets. They got to be government oversight, government regulated. It's plus, who else is going to buy their rockets? I mean, but that's the thing, There are some industries, yes, the government says, right, we need rockets. We'll hire these engineers to make these rockets for us. And these rockets are big and expensive, and they have to undergo lots of testing, and they're not profitable. They understand that. But people invest in these companies, and they turn around and say, right, how do we make rocketing profitable? Well, we'll give people satellite television. We'll give them satellite communications. We'll give them internet everywhere. And somehow Elon's the bad guy for giving you internet everywhere cheap. You know, this is the mentality we're dealing with. So when it comes to the people who support Ukraine, they're very low IQ, okay? They're very selfish people. They're not the ones who are going to be fighting this war. They don't care what happens to Ukraine. They care about the opportunities. Remember the leaking last year of corporate papers from BlackRock, which is what that leak has embarrassed BlackRock deeply. They have withdrawn, not completely, but from the public eye, they've withdrawn a lot of their support for Ukraine. Okay, they closed and transferred the Ukrainian rebuilding fund back to the, because it was a scam. Okay, the British government creating the Ukrainian building fund to launder money they were stealing off the Russians, right? From Russian assets and stealing from Russian billionaires and selling it to give to Ukraine. Why? So they can tell you how good they are while they're selling Russian assets to their mates at major discounts. That's all about stealing with manufactured consent. As long as they can get you to demonize Russia as the bad guy, they can do anything they want. That's abuse of power. And Ukraine is getting to a very dangerous position now of abuse of power and the level of narcissism that hasn't been seen since 1939. So, in retaliation for attacks on Russia, Zelensky talks about strengthening coalitions and air defenses. Captain Sky Shield! As you can see, it's not in Ukrainian either. Captain Sky Shield is... The mask is dropping. They're trying to... He doesn't care about Ukraine. He's destroying Ukraine. And the idiots in Kiev, they don't care because they're getting their end. And they're going to leave Ukraine as soon as it's dead. They're like that third-generation Greek refugee. They might have a Greek name. They can't speak Greek. They've never eaten Greek food in their life. They find a wife who is the least Greek of their community. And they have no work ethic. And they complain about Greece all the time. And they've never been there. Their grandparents, when it's not the Greek of their grandparents, you know. Greece has devolved because all the good people left, you know. You couldn't get ahead in Greece, so they went to America. Now, of course, the third generation and fourth generation, you know, they're not Greek anymore. But they pretend to be Greek. And they go back to Greece, and it's not their grandparents' Greece, and they got no connection to it. And they go on TikTok complaining about how Greece has changed. Well, your grandparents left Greece. They were Greek. They took Greece out of Greek and then flooded it with foreigners. And all the people left behind are all the people who drop out of high school so they can take time off for a holiday funded by the government. Once upon a time, you could take a Greek holiday and work your way around Greece. Yeah, because Greeks wouldn't work. Now they're replacing all the... bringing in all the foreigners to do all the work. You know, it's all this greed. But Greece is the model, you know, the test run. Now they're trying to do it with Ukraine, where again, a Keir Starmer clone, you know, not a Ukrainian. Like, Keir Starmer's not British, okay? You have all these countries now with foreign rulers. Have you woken up yet and realised you've been occupied? Sooner or later, the Ukrainians have to turn against their government. It's the only way to survive. Now, Sumi's power supply was hit by Russian drones, fighting in the north, but to no avail. Again, attacks on Kharkiv and renewed fighting in the north, to very little change on the map. So, Little changes on the map, nothing spectacular going in Kupiansk right now, but there is fighting around Kupiansk, and renewed fighting. Those weren't there before. We have new fighting down here. We have changes to the map here. As you can see, Russia's advancing, but not here for some reason. That's weird. Alright, so might be that they're going to advance into here, and they may not go all the way to Izum. Who knows? They may go up to here, and then come down through here and cutting off these roads through here. Just as effective if they can blow the... I mean, it's easier to if you occupy the town, but blowing it away and cutting the road works. We have... Yeah, Lyman, that's it. What am I thinking? A little bit more territory near Lyman taken. Fighting on the outskirts of Seversk, but again, battle not much progress. A little bit of progress south of to the south, back to Chavez Yar. Bit of fighting, nothing of significance. A little bit of progress down this road, not much. The Russians have a few key areas where they're still held back by the Ukrainians. Meanwhile, in Kursk, the Russians have made further advances in street fighting and clearing buildings of the Yukis. Now, here we have a little bit of change to the map, but nothing of significance. But a lot of combat in the last 12 hours has broken out in this area. Russian assault forces have entered Milyaned. They've been able to hit the Ukrainians in a few areas, but have not established any one area as under Russian control. They've made further advances on the outskirts of Nova, but nothing significant. Little bit of change to the map here, nothing significant. Right. Posk, only a few new blocks under Russian control, but the key part of Soba is under Russian control, and Russian assault forces have struck the city in multiple places. But there are artillery exchanges and fighting. I mean, the Ukrainians are desperately now trying to attack the Russians from behind the lines with infiltrators, but most of them are on a one-way trip. This is what I'm talking before about. They're training people to die, right? This useless idea of resistance to the so-called occupiers. Well, people don't see it as such. You know, the Ukrainians are just sending themselves to their deaths instead of negotiating a peace, full settlement. Sorry, folks, but the French resistance, if the English hadn't invaded France, the French resistance would have been wiped out. Okay, the majority of France, that's what they won't tell you, was socialist. Okay, they didn't want the communists. Most of the French were turning against the resistance because they were communist. The British betrayed, you know, the working class in Britain, and you've seen that over time. But you can't tell these people, these trade unionists, they're just so selfish. No, bro, it's all for a better society. Well, this is your better society. Endless wars, as Orwell warned you. Changing of language. Now, elimination of freedoms in the name of security. But the trade unionist, all he wants to do is drag his knuckles and go, jump for life, jump for life. Yeah, how short a life that is. And a miserable one at that. In a meaningless, meaningless single life, eating bugs in your one-bedroom apartment, watching the Keir Starmer on TV tell you to praise Ed and praise Allah and all these other things, and then maybe you'll wake up. Because Starmer ain't British. Zelensky ain't Ukrainian. The EU is a fascist state. It's the USSR all over again. It's like the people in the USSR. They in the first decade or two, they hated Stalin, but the British never released the pressure valve a little bit, and they settled in. Well, this is what's happening in Europe. They settled in. And now the unelected rule over them, and they just drink whatever garbage is fed to them. And the majority keep letting the media gaslight them into thinking they're the minority. They're letting the trade unions rig elections time and time again. Now and again releasing the pressure valve to let maybe a few conservatives win. But look at France. It's just so obvious that Macron didn't win the election because nobody likes him. Nobody's standing up for Macron. Even his own party's talking about what a failure he is. Alright, so we have a growth spurt, although the Russians have been up here before. A little bit of change to the map, but I don't know if this is just the way it's drawn. But as you can see, the Russians have made advances. They're making more advances. They're engaging Ukrainians on multiple fronts. And they're building up towards a siege of Hula. Maybe here. Maybe here. Here is more likely. They're likely to just spur up and keep that under artillery while they work on this. Because this is probably just... This is a battle line, right? A box. Technically, it's a V here, but, you know, they're not going to form a line here. They're going to crack the nut, you know? Vice. It's what although the Russians call it a cauldron, it's a vice grip. Now, Zaporozhye again blacked out due to artillery strikes, you know, and backwards and forwards. We have artillery strikes on Nikopol, isn't it? Nikopol, yeah, and Kherson, as well as fighting Cross River. Mykolaiv hit again. This was a missile strike. It's a port. But somehow you hit a ship in port and it kills women and children. That's the kind of Ukrainian propaganda you're going to hear all the time. I'm sick of it. And we have more strikes on Ukraine, and probably more to come over the next 24 hours. Now, the Russian forces have successfully advanced towards Seversk and Zavnoka in the DPR, according to Denis Pushkin. Now, situation is dire for the enemy, according to his video address on the Telegram channel. I think his news is a little older. I think TASS is just repeating what I've repeated, and probably you've heard probably from others as well if you watch other channels that this is going to be a huge psychological blow, because Seversk has held out many times before, and Bakhmut fell. You're like, they made a big deal. Oh, yes, maybe Bakhmut fell, but it's not as important as Seversk. But Seversk ain't important, okay? The industrial hub at Lyman is important. Okay, this is an important industrial hub. Okay, and it's also the buttress of fortresses to protect the flank of Slanova and Cram. Cram is the key, right? Well, Cram, the Ukrainian army, does not have air bases and refueling depots, and of course the Russians have hit the train again. But again, they have the rail line. Without the rail line, they cannot move men and machines and supplies quickly down to Konsk and up and down this line, right? It's only... and as the Ukrainians have shown, they are unwilling to adapt, whereas the Russians have adapted. The Ukrainians started using drones. For every drone every drone launched at Russia, Ukraine got droned. And soon the drone war escalated and Russia got better and better at it, to the point where they now own the Ukrainians on the battlefield. But we now have a mask off. We now know who voted what on the Russian asset siege. Belgium, Italy and France are concerned about their financial liabilities. That the use of Russian assets is unlawful, according to the Italian newspaper. Under international law, they can only freeze assets. They cannot seize assets. The European Union, in order to seize Russian assets, has to declare war on Russia. That's what... it is tantamount to declaring war. You just walk in and steal another country's assets. That's war. That's not a friendly act. That's an act of war. But this guy, we now know who's the power behind the throne. Okay? Kolklomsky is the head of the Brotherhood. They control Kiev. They're mafia. They masquerade as, this is the Ukrainian mafia. They pose as a Ukrainian political party. They are also the Nazi party. They believe that they're the army of God. And they are recruiting Muslims, by the way. And they want to conquer Russia and China. Yeah. So, who's the oppressor? Right? They say, no. They're the enemy. They're the devil. That'll be a great adventure. Great joy. Except he's not the one doing the fighting, right? Typical old man wants children to go to war so that he can wound up more resources for him and have an easy retirement. This is old as time, you know? But the Ukrainian military has been losing grounds. He's not been able to recruit his Grand Army. But in most countries, he's not able to recruit anymore. The British, have stopped sending mercenaries, apparently, although this is unconfirmed. The Telegraph hasn't confirmed this. Now, Zelensky claimed that since the escalation of conflict in 22, only 46,000 have been killed, etc., etc. Ruled out territorial concessions and recognizing Russian territories. But we all know now, the fact is, 2 million Ukrainians have died since 2014, and this guy's just tickled pink because he wants some great, grand adventure that will bring great joy. Yeah. I don't mind somebody wanting to defend their country. Okay? But at some point, if you play war games, you're going to have to accept losing. Because if you don't accept losing, they're just going to eliminate you. That's the problem, right? If you can fight the enemy to a standstill, which Ukrainians could have, okay, they could have fought Russia to a standstill, like they did in 22, and call a truce and cede the Donbass, it would have been over. But people like him, nah, it's a grand adventure. It's a jolly old adventure, chaps. Remember, the people who are saying all this are the same people in World War One who said exactly the same thing. The same people in World War Two who said exactly the same thing. Not one of them poked their head out of a trench or put on combat boots. The same people are doing it again. Sending you to war so they can take more for themselves. But we finally have an answer to Zelensky demanding Tomahawk cruise missiles. Now, officially, these are different. These are called Tomahawk Land Attack Systems. These are actually they're tube launched, but these tubes can be mounted on ships, trucks, but apparently there are a few aircraft who can launch them, but apparently Ukraine doesn't have any that can carry them. But after Vladimir Putin's response and once again claims he believes he'll succeed in ending the Ukraine war, that he's committed to ending the Ukraine war, so he's not considering transferring Tomahawks because it will be an escalation. But the media is having an apoplectic fit. Meanwhile, Russia doesn't need to own the roads. They don't need to occupy towns anymore. They can cut them off. Now, these are the roads into Pokrovsk. This shows you... Now, let's see. Whoops, did I go? Yeah, here we go. They're coming down from the north. Okay? So they're coming down this road. Okay, the greenery. Somewhere around here. Greenery. It's got a row of trees hiding the rail line. Let's see. Behind those trees, there's a rail line. There's this is the service road to the rail. This is the only way in. That's under Ukrainian control completely. But it's not. It's under Russian control. They just don't know it yet until they get on the road. Because, bang, you can see, right, Russian drones. There's a dry drainage ditch, or more likely once was a probably filled in trench line, and they just set drones there, and as trucks come past, they just come up, fly into the front of them, and catch them off guard. Here they come again, straight out of the trees, bang. Here's a car, bang. Many, many times over the drainage ditch, bang. The truck is doing 55. These drones are doing twice that speed. Ooh. Look at that. Armored vehicle, doors open. Oopsies, that's it. Cope cage is useless when the doors open, right? Here they come. Armored vehicle, bang. Here's the drone. Highly maneuverable, highly fast, bang. Another one, bang. Bang. These are all over the last week. In the last week, vehicle after vehicle. You can see blown out windows, all sorts of things on the road. The Ukrainians come in at night and tow their vehicles away to hide their losses. But they've even... these are hitched trailers. As you can see, they come in at night. Bang. Supply. The Ukrainians drop off these supply trailers. But even if they're empty, the Russians still blow them up because the Ukrainians will tow them back to base and reload them. So even when the Russians are blowing things up, and the Ukrainians so far see the Ukrainian aircraft, the spotter aircraft disguised as civilian aircraft. But as you can see, here's what's going on in Pokrovsk. You can see, boom. Each strike blows up a building. There's the center of town. This is actually from the north looking south. That's why the sun's in the wrong position. They're heading the north side of Pokrovsk. This is here, in this area here. The drone is up here looking down this way, over everything. So there's the center of Pokrovsk, you can see, right? That's why the sun looks to be in the east, but it's not. It's in the west, because they're looking down from the north. That's right. You know, this is faster than the fall of Bakhmut in many ways, but of course, in reality, does it really matter how fast the Russian army goes? The Ukrainian goal should be a unified front, multi-layered defences. Almost nothing gets through. Their supply lines continually feeding ammunition. The Ukrainians able to shoot down the drones with various methods, jam the drones outright. Okay, both sides have extensive electronic jamming, but the Russians are taking out that Ukrainian jamming, Ukrainian supplies. Ukrainians do not control this road. They're having to come down from the north, and the Russians probably flying drones across up through here, landing them in here, and just waiting for them to come down the road, and then they just pop up and take them. They have a clear view, unhindered. The Ukrainians aren't shooting down drones. You do not see any air defences or any missiles. All those spectacular night shots that they used to show of Ukraine come from Kiev and other areas. There's no Iris T's. There's no where's the British Sparrows? Where's the Thor? Where's all these systems they sent to Ukraine? Where are they? Right? Here's one of your most important hubs. If this falls, this gives the Russians all this. Right? They almost control it already now. Okay? This falls, it's the siege of Vosk and the flanking of the Zelensky line. All those men and machines, right? As I said, they should have had a unified front. Asymmetrically, right? Protecting the flanks. Mobile infantry, protecting the flanks. Coming down here. They should have opened up these roads more. They didn't plan. Obviously, they spent 10 years arming Ukraine. And they didn't make... And they spent, 1.2 trillion just on building bunkers here. There's a Ukrainian politician who got executed because he questioned what happened to the billions of dollars spent building bunkers at Lyman. We'll go back here. Where's the bunkers? Well, actually, I think they did build the bunkers. They just don't want to... He made a foot and mouth mistake. He was probably not part of the inside club. And they were probably looking for an excuse to get rid of him. So I'll tell you where the bunkers are. Look at the burnt out buildings that are still standing. That's the bunkers. Hidden in plain sight. So why are the Russians hitting those other areas? They're the entrance, right? They blow up the supply depots. They blow up the forward positions, the observers, the drone launchers. They hit the communications hubs. They're not going to stick an aerial on their bunker. It's in the basement of these buildings. These buildings that are just to absorb the artillery hits. But they have tunnels under the city and entrances. So when the Russians find them, they blow those up. This war is so full of misinformation sometimes. I've got to be very careful because not every town is laid out the same. But a lot of these big buildings in the middle are definitely hiding command centers, but because they cannot fire directly into them, or maybe they don't want to, they want to capture them, so they collapse tunnels. Of course, my goal started off as just to study this war, but it's appalling how people are devolving very quickly into dragging their knuckles and cheering on a war that they're not going to fight, as they watch Ukraine destroy itself. And basically that's now going to become another hub for mass migration of Indians and Arabs and Africans to establish a foothold in Europe. You've been warned. You don't want to be warned. Orwell warned you. Huxley warned you. Frank Herbert warned you. So many people warned you. But no, the British trade unionist knows better. The American Democrat knows better. We're making a better world. No, you're a naive muppet with no real world experience, with no backbone. You're just the appeaser, feeding your neighbour to the Nazi war machine because you think we're in peace. We're just the peace. But Zelensky, Keir Starmer, they're not interested in you. They're only interested in their own careers. Long ago, people would storm the Bastille, hang these politicians, but the cowardice has set in. The rot has set in. But this is why they're panicking. People like you who refuse to bow to the New World Order, whether it's Bush, Cheney, Bill Clinton, Keir Starmer, Zelensky, Xi Jinping, doesn't matter. We all know that the axis of evil, the 48 men who sit around the table of power, don't give a fuck about you. They hate Donald Trump. They hate us. They hate reform in the UK. They hate the Alternative for Deutschland. They hate Marine Le Pen. Just notice they don't hate Modi. That tells you all you need to know. Okay? But they're in a panic, folks. Keep up the good work. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, could you please support the channel and support me through Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree, description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Thank you to each and every one of you. I appreciate you. See you in the next video. Bye for now.